All right, let's get Margaret to get her question in. Margaret?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I was just going to ask quickly, the minister has clarified that generation capacity has increased to, I beg your pardon, the wheeling capacity of the transmission company has increased to 7,000 megawatts. Now, you say that we should we should stop all investment in that regard because the grid is obsolete. Now, what's going to become of it? Some people will ask, is all of that infrastructure going to go to waste? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, that's my suggestion. I mean, the case is just like trying to treat a wounded lion, really. What's going to happen? I mean, you're just going to keep doing that over and over again. The funds are not there. The federal government, invited Manitoba to advise on this transmission lines. They don't have. They're not bringing the money to invest in it. Why would the government want to keep investing in something that has not been working? These are things that are not fashionable anymore. The Nigerian electricity sector was modeled after the United Kingdom, all right? And Nigeria should start to see advantages in the disadvantages that we are right now by getting out of this quagmire that we find ourselves, generating power all the way from Sapele and transmitting to Lagos. It just doesn't make no sense. Ask anybody in the experts in the sector will tell you it doesn't make no sense.
Okay.
Well, you said that initially, the capacity was about 5,000 megawatts. Now that we're at 7,000, it means that new investments are being made in that sector, and they believe that that's still one of the ways to go, one of the efficient ways to go, cost-effective, as it were. You think that that's all going to be a waste now?
It's good. It's good if they keep it to the limit. All right. If all the power plants come online, the 12,522 that Nigeria has, all right, like you rightfully said, Malkwe, the TCN admitted that they can only wheel out 7,000, which means even if we generate 30,000 by tomorrow, Nigerians won't get our electricity through this transmission line. So what's the point? That's what I'm saying. Why would you want to keep investing in something that does not work? Does that answer your question?
That's not quite, because, one of the reasons the minister had given was that the transmission lines weren't working because new investment had not been made in the transmission company for quite a while. But let's leave that matter for now. Let's quickly address the problem of GENCOs not being paid, because one of the reasons GENCOs say that they're not, being able to pay for gas, which is priced internationally, is that the discos are not remitting monies to them, and so they are running at a loss. Now, I think a senior partner in PwC did recommend that perhaps to overcome this problem, the ownership capacity of these companies should be increased in such a way that one company can own generation and a disco company. Do you think that that would help?
Yeah, that will help. I think that's the right step in the right direction.
Okay, let's go back to
how feasible would it be with the TCN in the middle?
Well, the TCN is owned by the federal government, right? And they are responsible for wheeling out the power. What happens is the distribution company pays the TCN, and the TCN pays the GENCOs, right? If the distribution companies are not getting their monies, because the GENCOs are not generating power, so the distribution companies cannot sell. Even the powers that the distribution companies are to sell, due to technical and commercial losses, they're not getting the accurate amount of energy supplied to them, and they're not able to sell to meet the profit. Apart from that, there are no meters, all right? Customers are not metered. So the energy theft is happening every now and then. It's just a quagmire that Nigerians find themselves in with the obsolete distribution lines. And so therefore, it will make absolute sense if each discos can generate their own power or own their own generation company, and that way they can mitigate the problems themselves. Which means that they're probably going to have to either invest in new transmission lines or use existing transmission lines by injecting power through their own substation and feeding localities. Still back to what I've said, captive power.
If we could talk about, stretch a little further, administrative issues now.
Yes.
You spoke about the TCN, but you have people who ask questions such as, TCN for a while, there was this, nobody knew what was going to happen next because there was a date wherein the old management was going to leave. Nothing happened until lately, and even when the minister was speaking, you saw some of those members of staff protesting. So can we then say that they missed it at some point in terms of administration?
Yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, the Senate president did say it. I mean, he's admitted it. The whole process of privatization was done in error. All right? There were steps taken were not accurate, were not thoughtful process, so to speak.
I'm just wondering.
It's an admission, isn't? I mean, it was in the papers.
I'm wondering. I don't know how they came to that conclusion because I like to think that when that privatization was done, there are several agencies, both supposed to midwife the privatization,
yes,
and then supposed to also follow up in terms of post-privatization. Yes. That's talking about the NCP.
NCP, yeah.
So have they checked to see? Okay, well, let's look at that chain. Where did we get it wrong? Is the NCP? I don't know when last I heard anything about the NCP.
I was just about to say that nobody's checking. That's a good point, a valid point you said. Nobody's checking. Everybody's quiet. And back to what the Senate president just said. Nobody's doing anything about it. The NCP is there. We've not heard about them. What are they doing? All right. Are they monitoring this the whole process? No news about it. We don't know what they're doing.
And so if we then go ahead and get all the other agencies, even if it's renewable alternative energy, and you don't have regulatory agencies doing their bit. I mean, if you have questions of NERC, if you have questions of NCP, if you have questions of TCN, if you have questions of BP, if they don't stand up and be counted, what becomes of those who are providing the service?
Well, some of these institutions are meant to be unbundled at some point in time, all right? Like I know, for example, the MBET itself is a vehicle, all right, to guarantee payment for the investors, the GENCOs. So what becomes the fate of investors is just what has been happening in Nigeria. I'm sorry, there's no clear picture at this point in time. Everybody's doing what they like. Everybody's fighting for relevance. NERC is fighting for relevance. The DISCOs are fighting for relevance. The GENCOs are fighting for relevance. I mean, talk about TCN is fighting for relevance, taking their eyes off the goal itself, taking their eyes off the peril of the people, of the suffering of the nation. There's no light. We want light. How do we get light? All right? The bureaucracy is just too much.
The DISCOs say they're being owed about 800 billion. As a matter of fact, they're meeting today to try to resolve that.
Even the federal government
from the MDAs, yes, the MDAs. The MDAs
federal
are
government is the disco.
Now, what do you think will come out of such a meeting that they're holding today to try to recover 800 billion naira?
I hope they don't box themselves. Sorry, I just hope they don't end up boxing themselves. Because you have the army is owing a large sum. All right? You have the federal government owing large sums. You have parastatals owing large sums to these discos. These are private investors.
Do you think they can pay?
I don't work for government. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, Nigeria is broke.
If you were in that meeting,
and you're saying,
if you were in that meeting today, what would you advise?
Well, I will advise that the government pays up what they're owing, all right, so that the discos can also pay the GENCOs, all right, because it's a value chain. If no one is meeting their obligation, then the whole chain is going to suffer. All right. The federal government is owing a large sum of money to this disco. They can't operate. These are monies being borrowed, on loan from banks. They have to pay back.
But how realistic is it that the government in the budget pegs the funding of that budget at 305 naira to the dollar? And now that has greatly changed to so it's somewhere between 500. Are we living in denial of rescuing this sector?
Totally. Totally we're living in denial. Energy experts, all right, they stipulated that for Nigeria to continue to grow at 10% interest, 10% rate, GDP rate, by 2020 we should have attained 30,000 megawatts, all right? And by 2030, for us to continue to grow at 10% GDP, 2030, we should have, I think, 78,000 megawatts. Right here, we're discussing an abysmal average of 2,000 megawatts to 0 megawatts.
Let's wind down with some of these thoughts. I mean, it's clear Nigerians want to pay for electricity that they consume. Yes. They want to see services and pay for it.
Yes.
But can we successfully embrace alternative energy without being shackled by all of these challenges we're facing?
Yes, yes. I think that there's been right steps in the right direction. I mean, we have to give the government some kudos. You know, some people are thinking, all right. Last year, it was in the news that there's some private investors. The Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company signed a PPA, power purchase agreement, with private investors to generate utility-scale solar to the grid. All right? The power purchase agreement has been signed, which is the first agreement the NBET signed. All right? And then there's Lajuwomi Power, which is coming live soon. But my fear is that utilities, we're talking about utility-scale power. All right? We're adding more to the generation to be transmitted to the obsolete lines. Nobody's talking about the technical losses. Nobody's talking about the commercial losses. All right? Are these going to be fed for captive areas? If that is the case, I mean, if, say, for example, you have Kogi State, you're generating power, the whole solar farm is going to feed Kogi State, that's fine. All right? But if you're going to plug it back in the grid, I'm sorry, we're going to be back into the same problem. Sorry, let me just run it up. NBET is to pay these investors, but no one has really checked if NBET has the liquidity to do so. Should there be any force majeure or not? Nobody's thinking about that.
Well, I see people asking on Twitter, they say if Professor Batinaji did something and did it well at that time, what is it that he did that we can't seem to pick up from? But that's where we'll have to anchor. We'll have to thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
O'Neil Lajuwomi is the CEO of Wavelength Integrated Power Services. Thank you for coming on this morning. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.